You're listening to the Grit to Growth podcast. Real talk with real business owners and professionals who built their freedom the hard way and now want more time, money, and impact.
Hello and welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Levi Tisla with Mailbox Money, and today we're talking about moments in life when the stakes are high, when people are facing situations they never expected, and they don't feel prepared for it and need someone in their corner. Brett Waltner is joining me today, and he is a partner at Myers Billion and has spent years representing people through some of the most difficult chapters in their life. Brett, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, sir. So I always like to give a little room here at the beginning for my guests to kind of introduce themselves, let people know who they are personally before we get into your career, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Well, as you said, my name's Brett Waltner. My job is I'm a lawyer at Myers Billion. Myers Billion's a law firm. We've been around many different shapes and makeups, but I think for more than 100 years. I, of course, haven't been here that long. I've been here about 7, but we're located downtown, currently in Shriver Square. We have 8 lawyers, soon to be 9. Pretty wide variety. We handle a whole host of things depending on which attorney's handling it. I myself do a lot more. It's pretty wide ranging, but a lot of trial work. I do a lot of criminal defense, a lot of personal injury. Some family law, some financial stuff here and there. So it's pretty broad. But personally, I'm originally from Larchwood, Iowa, so not too far away, just across the border.
Very cool.
But then went to USF, my undergrad, played baseball, went to USD right after for law school. Started my career as a prosecutor in the state's attorney's office here in Minnehaha County.
Really?
And then from there, got into private practice, and I can't believe. Yeah, I graduated in 2007, so it's been 18 years this year, 17 years, and it's incredible how fast it goes.
No kidding.
But live in T, have since 2009, have a wife, have 3 daughters, so just trying to navigate all of the teenage years that brings, and yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Kind of sticking with that a little more personal and going back some time. What originally drew you into becoming an attorney?
That's a really good question. I'd love to tell you it's something I knew I wanted to do since I've been 5 years old. That would be a lie. I remember taking some government classes where we'd have people come in, and there was a local attorney that came in and would talk to the class. And I remember thinking I could never do that. I could never know every law. I think that's what kind of people outside until you get in probably things that lawyers do. They know everything about every law and every legal issue. And that's what I thought. Really wasn't on my radar. In undergrad, I met someone. I was a business major at USF. And so in undergrad, I met a guy who had gone, he was a lawyer, but he had also done the MBA program. There's a dual program at USD that offers that. For some reason, I never ended up doing that. That's what kind of drew me to it, to think, I could use my business degree and get a law degree. I have an older aunt who went to law school. She's about 10 years older than me. She had actually gone to law school when I was in undergrad as well. And so that kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit more about it, what it was, and kind of took some of the intimidation away. So yeah, I decided to do it. That's kind of eventually what started it. So
very nice, very nice. Going back to district attorney persecuting office and everything there, tell us, is there any kind of crazy stories or what was that like in your experience?
Yeah, everyone always asks tell me, anything crazy happened, and sometimes we forget about it. We see a lot of stuff that maybe to the outside world is eye-opening, and it's just sometimes another day for us. So law school is 3 years. Between my second and third year of law school, that's when you do a lot of internships, and I interned at that office, and got to see a lot of the day-to-day workings, be in the courtroom. It happened to be then right before I graduated, they had some people leave, and I got hired right out of school. So it just kind of fell into place. ended up working there. I really liked it. I really, as a young lawyer, it gave me a lot of courtroom experience. Essentially, those lawyers are in the courtroom, every day, especially in Minnehaha County. It's the largest
Yep.
county in South Dakota, the largest volume of cases. And so we're constantly in the courtroom, constantly in front of the judges, constantly dealing with people. And so that gave, the experience was invaluable. There's some attorneys that graduate and never step in a courtroom. They don't want to, and
Not what most people think of, hearing a lawyer, attorney, like
yeah,
they
yeah, they
always,
think of
picture.
yeah, they think of Law and Order, right? Or
Yep,
Bull or
exactly.
whatever law show is on TV, and they're always showing, right, trials. But um, so yeah, it was a great experience. I worked with a lot of great people I'm still friends with. Unfortunately, if you want to work eventually for yourself and go into private practice, you can't necessarily be a prosecutor. Some smaller counties have contracts you can do, but generally you're working for the state. And so I didn't mind the work. I like what I do now as well. But I still have great respect for the people that handle that. It can be tough. You're dealing with situations that are really tough, and yeah, there's run of the mill cases that are a lot more, smaller misdemeanors, but there's some serious cases you can run into as well, and that can be pretty heartbreaking. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's I was gonna say, going through kind of your bio and stuff, you're talking about bringing a calming and a reasonable presence to difficult situations that I'm sure popped up all the time there. How important is it that your emotions are in check when things are running kind of hot?
yeah, I think that's really important, whether it's, in the legal industry or anywhere else. But the legal side of things, for sure, one of the reasons you don't want to represent yourself in a lot of situations, or people say it's a bad idea, is because you're not seeing things clearly. You're in the midst of emotion, and a lot of times, if you're letting emotion dictate your decisions, you're probably going to look back and say, well, I didn't make the best decision possible. So, in my opinion, one of my jobs as someone's attorney or lawyer is to really sit down and provide them with different options, and help them see both the potential pros, the potential cons. Of course, we don't know. Sometimes when a decision's in a third person's hands, whether it's a jury or a judge,
Yep.
you don't know what that decision is going to be and the outcome is going to be, but you're really trying to make an informed and thought out decision, and helping a client do that. So yeah, remaining calm. I think a lot of times, whether it's custody, whether it's criminal, whether whatever it is, it's a really important thing in our clients' lives, and naturally, emotion's going to play into that. I've been in situations before whether it's been a personal business dispute or something that comes up, and I think back and it's like, yeah, that's exactly why I shouldn't have represented myself, because, I've given people advice to say, like, hey, there's what you can do, and there's probably the smart thing when you're thinking about saving yourself stress and costs and everything like that. And I look back in those situations, it's like, yeah, I'm glad someone told me that, because when you get into it, it's like you're not necessarily thinking all the way around about some of those sort of things.
Is there a few obviously every situation is different, but is there a few tips and tricks that you're giving clients to help them slow down, start thinking more clearly when fear or stress is driving their decisions?
Um, sometimes it really is just sitting down and thinking about it and not making a rash decision. They always tell us, especially in the day and age of email and instant message, it's never send an email the same day. If if you get an email that you're kind of upset about, it's like, let it sit until the
Hmm.
morning. And that's probably good advice for everybody. There's been emails I've done, then the next morning I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't say that. You feel a little bit differently about it, but that's true in the midst of a client's case as well. Actually heard a really good tip on like a custody case. Sometimes, obviously parents want to do what they think is in the best interest of their kids, right? And emotions can run high if you've got, another parent that's doing something that you don't agree with. And it's easy to fire off a text, right? And one thing you got to think is, if you send that text, you got to plan on your attorney and ultimately a judge seeing it someday. And so one tip I heard actually from a prior client was, someone told me that if I get the urge to send, my child's father or child's mother or something really nasty, I either send that to myself as a note or I send it to a friend who can say,
Hey,
yeah, don't send that. So,
that's a
but
very good piece of advice
yeah,
right there.
yeah. So, but yeah, just in general, I mean, I think our job should really help be to kind of calm things down. I think, sometimes when we get in the heat of the battle as well, I think I'm competitive by nature. I imagine other people in this profession are too. And, you do get, you shouldn't get extremely personally invested because then again, I think you lose some of that ability to be,
Yeah.
a calming influence and be kind of an independent party to give your client advice. But naturally, you do get invested in their case and their story, and you want to see them succeed. Um, but at the same time, I think there is sometimes where attorneys, take it a little bit too far and get personally invested, and all of a sudden you're fighting with the other lawyer, and then that's driving up the temperature for the other side, and now cooler heads can't prevail because you kind of burn bridges, and no one then wants to give up because they feel like they're going to lose, and so yeah, I think being calm and being that person that even when the client's red hot, you can say, look, I understand completely, but here's the deal. We need to take a breath and look how this is going to play out in the future and how this is going to affect everybody, good and bad. And not just maybe how it affects their case, but how it affects them realistically going forward, whether
Yeah.
relationships, their personal life, all that kind of stuff. So,
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that side of things of not only just helping out a client, but from the attorney side of things for other ones, attorneys listening. Um, what are some things that you do when having to navigate telling a client what they need to hear, and not just what they want to hear?
boy, I think that's so important. And I'm, anything I say is not probably an original thought. It's something that was told to me by, an older attorney when I was younger. South Dakota is really great about that. We have, we're a smaller state. Our population isn't as much. And so, along the same lines, we don't have as many attorneys. We're a smaller, kind of closer knit.
Yeah.
That's not to me, and I know every attorney, but, um, and I just have my perspective here too. It's not like I've been an attorney in larger cities, but um, this community, the attorney community here is very close knit, pretty close, and always willing to kind of to help out. And I've had some really really important mentors in my career that I still look to, even though it's been 18 years, but I still call them all the time and be like, hey, what can I do here? And so going back to your original question, what was your original question? I got off track.
Basically how you no, you're totally fine. That was awesome. How you navigate being able to
Oh,
and tell a client something
yes,
that they need to hear, not just what they want to
right.
hear, and then helping other attorneys with
Yeah.
that side of things.
Yeah, so at least with the clients, it's absolutely an important job. And again, that's where I was saying, that's the advice that was given to me as a young lawyer. And I do think the longer you're in practice, the more comfortable you feel. Just like when we get older, we're more comfortable in our skin. We care less about what
Hmm.
other people think, as opposed to your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. I'm in my mid 40s now, so I think that's just natural. But um, I have learned that is so important for clients. We have clients that come in depending on what case it is, and it's, hey, here's my case, and one of the most important things I think, the questions I ask right away is, well, what are your goals? Because I need to know if their goals are realistic, right? And if they're not, I need to tell them that. Like,
Yeah.
I could say, sure, yep, someone owes you $500, and you have a good cause of action where if you go to court, you're going to get a judgment for $500. But I also need to tell them what it's going to cost to get there, the likelihood if they're going to ever recover that. A judgment's a piece of paper that says someone owes you it, but if they don't have property, you're never going to get it, right? So I need to be honest about if it's the best idea for them, if they're thinking about things again from kind of a 10,000-foot view. And then, yeah, sometimes there's tough conversations where it's like, I know this is what you feel. I know this is how you feel the law should work, but this isn't what the law says, right?
Yeah.
And if you go in, you can believe me or not, but this is what a judge is going to say. And, there's been plenty of times where I've told a client that and they haven't followed our advice, and that's fine. They're the ones that get to decide what to do. I'll still represent them as long as it doesn't violate any, ethical obligations we have. But there's been times where I've said it, and what the judge has said at the end of the case has been very close to what I said was going to happen.
Almost like you've been around the block a time or two.
You want to say I told you so, but no, I mean, I do think that's really important, to be pretty honest. I have run into cases where it seems like that's maybe not advice other people are getting, and you wonder, it's like, is someone just being a yes man, and saying what they want to hear? And again, I think that's very few and far between. Again, I think that the quality of lawyers we have in this state are top notch, and everyone's given good advice, and sometimes clients just don't want to listen, but yeah, for the most part, I do think it's extremely important.
Kind of, since you walked this journey and talking about lawyers in our area being a tight knit community, do you think South Dakota does a good job of being able to nurture people who want to become an attorney and being able to stay in South Dakota?
Yeah. So there's different things. I know the law school has, tried to introduce more programs, mentorship programs. The state bar has introduced some mentorship programs where, if someone's going out and they're not in a large office, and they don't have, especially attorneys in-house to learn from, they're connecting with people. Our state bar does a good job of trying to connect individuals. So our state is cut into different districts,
Okay.
or excuse me, circuits. And so like South Dakota or Minnehaha County and Lincoln County make up the second circuit of South Dakota. And they're, like Pennington County and some of those counties are the seventh circuit. The first circuit's made up a bunch of different counties depending on how much population. But so like,
Makes sense.
Here especially too, like we have a second circuit association, a young lawyers association. So there are things to do to try to connect lawyers with each other, to help provide those resources if young lawyers have questions, or even if you're not a young lawyer. There's some things the bar offers as far as, like personal development, like mental health sort of breaks and checks, because, this industry, like a lot of others, it can be really stressful. And so there can be high burnout, there can be addiction issues like anything else. And they've recently started a program is, well, the other thing we've struggled with in South Dakota, just because the nature of, smaller towns are getting smaller, people are moving to cities, is having attorneys in rural areas.
Yeah,
Having
I've heard this.
people in
Yeah.
those areas have access to a lawyer. And they've tried to create some incentives there too, for rural practice. So there are programs they've done, that have tried to appeal and, make it advantageous to stay here, and practice.
Is there, not to put you on the spot for an answer or anything, is there anything that you can think of that would maybe help improve these situations?
Well, like which one? Like the rural practice?
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Well, no, those are people that are smarter than me have tried to crack that problem, right? And dealt and develop programs. I know, the state bar and the Supreme Court were working on the rural practice kind of programs. And, I just think, unfortunately, it's natural that if those towns are getting smaller, there's going to be, like when you're running a practice, it is a business as well, right? If you're owning a practice.
Absolutely.
And so, you need to have enough of a client base to make that practice work. Now, some small towns do a really good job of, if you're the only lawyer in town and there's things that, business wise, you can keep steady and busy. But yeah, I think it's natural as more people move to the bigger cities, it's going to be harder. You've seen, it's like any other business. You go to a town in rural South Dakota that, at one time had its own car dealership and its own hardware store and, 3 restaurants on Main Street. Now you drive through that town now and, there's one store. And so, a law office is kind of the same, it's a business. And so the less businesses in that town, it's going to be harder to support. But there are, I will say things like Zoom, has opened up big areas too, where we get calls all the time from clients out of Sioux Falls and, sometimes a few different hours away. And it is a lot easier now to meet via Zoom and use these sort of resources to connect with clients and be able to provide them those services, even though we might be, a few hours away. So.
Along those notes of opening up other doors and things, anything going on at either Myers Billion or for you personally, Brett, that you're excited about in the near future here?
Well, we've grown, our office has grown quite a bit. We have total attorneys currently. There's five of us who are more partners. We have three associates currently. We have another one starting in March. And so, I'd say this is probably the size that we kind of want to stay at,
Yeah.
bigger you get, the more issues there are to deal with and potential problems too. But we also look, if people are calling and have things we can help them with, we want to be able to help them as well. And so, yeah, I'm excited about kind of where things are with our office. I think we've got a really good mix and group of people that, at the end of the day, really want to help people and do it the right way. I think that's really important. Personally, it's kind of it's obviously I've never been here before. This is the first time I've been in my 40s and had, three kids in their teenage years. I have a 16-year-old, almost 17, 13 and 11. And so, the oldest one, it's crazy. She was a baby when we moved to T, and now she's almost going to college. And, everyone says, don't blink, but man, is that true? And so, I'm kind of in that phase of my life right now where we're preparing for that. We still have a little bit of a younger one in the house, but it'll be done before you know it. And, you kind of look forward to being like, oh, okay, well, you get past the little kid stuff, but then you kind of miss it. And yeah, so lately I've just really trying to then slow down a little bit and enjoy kind of where I'm at and, and enjoy the future when it gets here, whatever that carries with it. But
Good for you, man. I think that's slowing down and enjoying it. Obvious, it's little bit, you hear it all the time, but saying it and doing it are different things. So I'm glad you're able to.
yeah, well, I said try, so I still have to remind myself. It feels like every couple of months too. It's like, hey, you said you were going to slow down, you were going to enjoy it, but now where's the last 2 months went? So, yeah, I think that's always a challenge. You're constantly wanting to grow and want to get better, but sometimes I think we do that at the expense of just not enjoying the day as it happens. So, uh,
For our listeners, if they are needing some legal counsel or anything like that, where would be the best place for them to get a hold of either yourself or someone at your law firm?
yeah, so we've tried to do a better job of having kind of a web presence lately. I think that just naturally, like anything else, is where everything's headed. We have, of course, a direct phone line. Our direct line is 605-336-3700. You can find me. I have my own Google page, but also Myers Billion page. We have a website, myersbillion.com. Yeah, we'd be happy to talk to anyone, and if we can help, great. If not, we try to get them in a place that can help them. If it's not something we deal with, and yeah, that's another part of Sioux Falls. If someone can't help you, typically they're going to try to get you in a place that can.
Nice.
So yeah,
That's what I love about this city too, and
yeah,
why I've chose to stay here. So that's good to hear, even on the law side of things.
yeah, and sometimes people take that the wrong way too, and be like, "Well, everyone's in cahoots with each other." There's backroom deals, and in my experience, that doesn't happen. Everyone's a professional, right? And
Hmm.
they're, every side of a legal situation needs good help. Like, we need to have good cops. We need to have good defense attorneys. We need to have, if it's a civil case, both sides should have good advice and people that know what they're doing. And that can remain calm and help us get to the best resolution that's possible. But it helps everyone. And, that doesn't mean that you're doing things that again violate your obligations to the client. It just means you're doing it hopefully the right way, at least in my opinion. So
I think that's a good note to end her on here. So, Brett, this has been an awesome, very grounded conversation. I really appreciate getting the insights to the work that you do and the perspective you bring to situations that are tough for a lot of people. So, thanks for coming on the show, Brett.
hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
For sure. And thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Know someone with serious grit and a great growth story? Send them our way at grittogrowthpodcast.com/guest.